Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Kyle and thank you for being here. I know exactly what you're thinking. This kid doesn't look a day over 27. Thank you very much for that. I'm actually 32, but I do have a lot of students that are 40 or over and quite a few in their retirement phase that wanted to pick up an instrument and just get going. And I've seen a lot of things that work in this phase and people that are just picking up their instrument for the first time later in life. And I am going to share everything that worked and get you started on your journey to becoming a master musician. Let's go. I still remember and am forced to remember the beginning phases as I put myself in the shoes of the person who is sitting in the chair across from me. It's really a good time. I enjoy it. But I remember some of the struggles that I had. Some are the same as the students that I was talking to you about that I had, and some are a bit different. And we will address those. But for now, let's go back to the beginning. Let's begin at the very start. And that is going to be choosing your instrument. This is such a good time. The thing about this is I usually have people walking in knowing what instrument they want to play. So it's very fun for me to be talking about this with you. So think about your personality type. That's going to have a play in this. Also be thinking about what genre you like and what kind of music you like. Do you want to be playing melodies? Do you like rhythm? Do you like harmonies, the mixture of beautiful sounds that come together and create a chord that just blows your mind? Let's start here though. The guitar and the piano, those are going to be the two most popular instruments as choices because they're accessible, and a lot of people have pianos in a lot of different places in everyone's houses. Guitar is portable, you can bring it wherever you want to go, and it's just a good mixture of everything. On guitar and piano you can play both melody, you have an element of rhythm for sure, and then you also have harmonies and chords that you can be doing, right? So moving on from those two though, if you're really focused on playing melody and you love that, the melodic ideas, and you want to be able to sing through an instrument because maybe you aren't so good of a singer yourself, then picking something like a stringed instrument from the stringed instrument family like the cello or the violin or the viola might be something for you. Or you could pick up a wind instrument if you so dare. But let's talk about each of those instrument families real quickly. The guitar is going to be, again, one of the most versatile instruments that you can play. It has, like I said, a mixture of melody, chords, and rhythm that you can do, that you'll be playing almost all of these at some point, and you can play them all together. The guitar is very nice entry level. You can get on Facebook Marketplace and pick something up pretty solidly from $100 to like $300-$400, get you going real quickly. But if you do decide to do that, you could get something really cheap, and I would bring it to your guitar tech, your local guitar tech. I would consider someone local, maybe not do like Guitar Center or something like that. But if that's your option and it's really close to you, you could do Guitar Center as well. But I've found that the local guys work really well for me. So if you find a guitar tech near you, they usually have a pretty good price for you. And sometimes they'll be a little extra generous for you. So you could bring in an instrument that you got from Facebook Marketplace for $100, and you could give it to them and they turn it immediately into something worth $200 or $300. They'll get all the intonation correct for you and everything sounding good if it's an electric guitar. If it's an acoustic guitar, they'll get you a truss rod adjustment, make sure the action's all nice, change the strings for you until you really learn how to do that. Get it all tuned up, get it cleaned, and make sure that everything is working properly and that it's all good to go. And so that's what I would do for guitar if you want to get started with that. Moving on to piano. Piano is great to begin with because what you can essentially do is you can get a little MIDI keyboard. You can have access to a whole library of sounds. So you can get a piano and be playing, the guitar, the violin, whatever sound. Like if you have a MIDI keyboard, it's really great. But, aside from that, you're gonna be thinking about if you're going to get a keyboard or an acoustic piano. Acoustic pianos are generally, a lot of times you find them just free on Facebook Marketplace. Just like, hey, if you have the ability to move this piano from point A to point B, it's yours, you can take it. And so you can be looking out for a deal like that. But if not, you can get an electric piano or a keyboard. for pretty affordable on Facebook Marketplace, or even really for new. You just want to kind of keep your eye out for a deal on Facebook Marketplace, I think is probably what I would do. We will be covering starting specifically guitar later on, or in general in another video, so stay tuned for that if that's the instrument that you've chosen. But let's move on to our next instrument family. Let's talk about the stringed instrument family: cello, violin, viola, maybe double bass. Double bass is kind of a different animal, so we'll stick within the cello, violin, viola range. But if you want to get a cello or a violin, you can get something that works for, anywhere from $200 to $500. You'll notice, and those are great to start out on, but you'll notice probably pretty quickly within the first year or two that you're going to want to upgrade, and these upgrades are pretty costly. So, if you have the extra time and extra money to spend, and this is something you've been wanting to do, definitely go for it. But I do want to say they will be a little bit more costly. A solid cello, like a really solid one that you can play for the rest of your life, is going to cost you almost as much as a car. So that's something to be thinking about. You can get something, mid-tier for anywhere from like $3,000 to like $7,000. So there's that, but then think about your maintenance as well. Every single time you need to maintenance that guy, you probably are going to want to bring it into a luthier. You don't want to do much yourself. Maybe change the string or two is the things that you want to do yourself. And speaking of strings, you can pick up a pack of guitar strings for, anywhere from like $10 to $30. On the low end, you get $10 and you're going. On the high end, for $30, you're getting some pretty solid strings and you're really jamming. But for violin, viola, and cello, I picked up a pretty good pair of mid-tier strings the other day, these Helicore D'Addario strings, and they were $175. So think about that. Right? Whereas if I went for the high tier cello strings, like some Larson Magnicore strings, that would have cost me in the ballpark of like $370 for a set of those. So that is definitely something to consider if you're thinking about picking up one of the stringed instrument families. But I will say this: if you do decide to pick up one of these instruments, there's almost nothing that will connect you to the music more than these instruments, because everything that you're doing is so organic and acoustic. You are stopping the note. You are creating the place at which this note is going to sound out. It's very specific. It's with the vibrato. It's very beautiful. And if you can get this correct, you are making people cry just by playing four notes. But along with that does go a lot of difficulty. People say playing violin is one of the most difficult instruments that you could ever decide to pick up. So there's that. You need to be thinking about that. Let's move on to our last instrument family, though, the wind instrument family. So we're thinking about reeds and brass and stuff like this. And I have coworkers that play these, and I have a friend at my guitar group who his kids play, and he plays some brass as well. I personally, this isn't my strong suit. I actually, one time, the guy who teaches lessons across the room from me, Josh, I was talking to him about maybe getting into a little bit of trumpet. And he walked me through. He gave me a quick 15, 20-minute rundown on the instrument maintenance and gave me a scale to play. And as I walked out the door, he said, "Yeah, good luck with that, man." And when I got home and was even trying to play before that, I just realized how difficult wind instruments really are to play. You have to be very specific with your embouchure, accessing different note registers with the shape of your mouth and stuff like that. It was a fun challenge, but I found myself getting really, really tired and out of breath, of course, because it's all about breath control, right? So if you're already like a good singer and your breath control is pretty on point already, then maybe this is going to be something for you. It's, again, beautiful melodies that we can get going here. If you like jazz music, then you might want to pick up the sax or the trumpet or something like this. And you can get a little bit of Coltrane or Davis going, Miles Davis stuff going. But these instruments are going to be pretty difficult to play as well. Something to consider. But again, if you were a singer who already has sort of an aptitude for a wind instrument, which kind of vocals is a wind instrument, right? Then you maybe can be thinking about doing something like this. Again, similar to the cello, these instruments will end up being a bit more expensive than a guitar or a piano might be that you're finding on Facebook Marketplace. Not as bad as the symphony or the stringed instrument family though, so there's that to consider as well. One quick side note that I did want to say about guitar. If you are going to start guitar, depending on what your goals are, I would almost always recommend getting an acoustic guitar first. There's a bunch of different reasons for this, but I would say the main reason is going to be you have the guitar in your corner and you don't have to plug it into anything. You don't have to adjust any settings. You don't have to mess with anything. You have a power outage, you can pick it up and play. You can take it to your camping trips. You can travel with it, and it's just very easy to get going with. So be thinking about that if you're choosing guitar. Probably lean more towards an acoustic unless you are like, no, I want to play specifically rock or specifically jazz. Then go with an acoustic guitar. You can, and even if you do want to play those genres, you can always upgrade to, some, cheaper version of an electric guitar. Fender sells pretty solid sets for like $300, where you're getting the guitar, you're getting the amp, you're getting the cables, you're getting picks, you're getting a case, you're getting everything for like $300 or even less than that. So that's really something to be considering as well if you were thinking about guitar. Okay, now that you've chosen your instrument and you're getting going and you know what you're doing and you're convicted about it, you're passionate about it, and you're going in this direction, now it's time to talk about beginning learning the instrument, right? So the most important thing that we need to talk about is, are we going to be doing lessons, or are we going to be just doing YouTube videos and teaching ourselves kind of, right? You could even do online lessons as well. I find it's better to be in person if you are going to do any lessons, because, being in the same room when you're playing music is super important, in my opinion. If you're doing something like guitar or piano, maybe doing YouTube videos for a while could be really good. And there have been a lot of really, really great musicians who never really took a lesson and just sort of taught themselves some chords, and that gave them enough to sort of express the musical ideas that they had, and they just spent time with the instrument and stuff like that. And that could be great for you, just going through, learning different YouTube videos, learning different songs and stuff like that. And, what's important is that you're getting a good sound and you're making a sound that pleases your ear, and you are feeling comfortable when you're playing the instrument. You're not just going through and being like, my fingers hurt when I'm playing this. If that's happening, you may want to be approaching it in a different way. But generally, I find even for piano and guitar, lessons are extremely, extremely helpful at the very least. We'll talk about that in a moment, but I just want to move on to those other two instrument families that we talked about, the stringed instrument family and the wind instrument family. If you are going to play these instruments, you definitely will want to get lessons because of the level of difficulty that these instruments demand, and the level of finesse that they demand, really. There are so many things that you may not catch in the beginning processes of learning these instruments. I'll speak to what I know, which is the stringed instrument family. When you're learning violin or cello, bowing, getting your bowing hand going, getting your bowing grip going, so much goes into that. Watching yourself when you are bowing, actually doing the bows, not just holding it. Holding it is a whole thing in itself, but when you actually start bowing, the proper technique of the arm and everything like this, not moving certain things, only moving your shoulder, stuff like this. And then that's not even holding the actual instrument as you're playing. So, which for violin is a huge thing, right? Cello gets to sit in your lap, basically, or in between your legs. Still stuff to that, but violin, you're kind of holding it here. You got this arm that holding, you're stopping notes and stuff like that. So getting lessons, super important, because we have all of these moving parts that are so, it's a lot to think about at one time, basically. And then for wind instruments, based off of my experience from trying to learn those, I was just sitting there learning the trumpet thinking, I really need to have someone watching me do this to tell me why I'm so out of breath, all these little mistakes that I'm making. Needless to say, that going back to that story when I was trying to play trumpet, I had it for about a week and I decided that I was probably not going to be branching out to wind instruments anytime soon again. Just because my area of practice is within stringed instruments and some piano as well. So yeah, the wind instruments and the stringed instruments, definitely, if you can, get lessons for sure. But if you can't, there's no reason why you can't, try to go and do some YouTube videos. I would just make sure that you are balancing the video watching and the theory that you're learning with practice as well. Very important. With guitar and piano, you definitely will want to get lessons as well if you can. Really the main reason is we want sort of an accountability, and we want to get to be with someone, right? We want to be with someone who knows what they're doing, who knows what they're talking about, to surround ourselves maybe even with a group of guitar players that we can sort of bounce off of and share our stories, share our, songs that we're learning, and play back and forth, and even jam with people and stuff like that. So get yourself, at least if you're playing guitar and piano, get yourself at least surrounded by people who are doing the same thing. And then if you can get some lessons, then you're doing that automatically, right? Because in a sense, at this point, if we don't, we need accountability, right? We need to have some accountability where we're showing up and we're saying, and someone is saying, hey, how did your practice time go this week? Did you practice at all? And you're going to be careful there, because you don't want it to turn into something that you should be doing, but you're not really doing it, right? And you start to feel guilty. So your guilt is associated with the instrument. So you start to avoid the instrument and stuff like that. So, get a teacher who is understanding that you are an adult, you're an adult learner, you have a life, maybe you have a family, and they're going to encourage you and offer you ways in which you can sort of surmount, I guess, those problems and issues that you have, and not judge you about them and really sort of be finger wagging at you. A lot of instructors that I know aren't very finger waggy, but in the stringed instrument world, and maybe even the wind instrument, I'm not very sure about that, like I said, but in the stringed instrument world, and you're an adult learner, it might be difficult to find an instructor who isn't finger waggy, because it's a family of instruments that is taken very seriously. And yeah, I've heard tell of, I actually have a student that I used to have played violin, and she said that her violin student dropped her because she was trying to focus on more serious students and stuff like that. And it just kind of made me drop my head. And I understand, instructors have different things, especially if they're performing and stuff like that and doing other musical activities they're in. A lot of times you find a stringed instrument instructor who is also in their symphony in their city. Like for me, that would be an instructor in Tulsa who's in the Tulsa Signature Symphony. We got a lot of those guys doing lessons around town. So they're serious, So really, really make sure that you are just trying out instructors first before you really choose one that is going to work for you. The first one doesn't always have to be it. Just try some out and see where you land. But speaking of accountability and practice and stuff like that, let's move on to the practice routines and how much you're going to want to be practicing and how you're going to be practicing and stuff like this. A lot of people quit because they don't see the fruits of their practice. So a great thing to do might be to record yourself. A great thing to do might actually be to record that very first time that you're playing the instrument, and then record yourself again a week to a month later and see where you're at, right? So always be remembering where you started, right, versus where you're at now. I guarantee you it's always a huge trajectory upwards for the most part. But when you're practicing though, at the same time, you might feel like there are times where you start to dip. And this is a great moment for you, because it means that you're about to go back up and you're going to have another growth of skill. So when you go through moments of time where you're practicing and it feels like you're getting worse, celebrate that, because what happens is when you go down, or you have the dip is what it's called, that's a moment right before you start to transform and learn new things and have a trajectory upwards. A great book to read that I'll link in the description below is called Effortless Mastery by Werner, and he goes through this idea of how you're practicing and you feel like you're getting worse, but it's just because you're about to get better. But if you are an adult learner and you're really all in, really, I would encourage you to get this book. This is probably the number one book that I would recommend for people to read who are getting into actually doing music as an adult learner, and they're doing this, at a later phase in their life. It's a great book, and it'll really encourage you and really gets you to realize what the fundamentals and rudiments of playing really are. It's not about shedding all the time. And speaking of that, you don't want every practice session to be something like, I'm learning this song and I'm playing this song and I have to do this song, in you're banging your head against a wall sometimes. Don't have to every practice session have to be like that, right? Sometimes your practice sessions can just be you sitting down with the instrument. You know the A major scale on the violin, and so you're just playing the A major scale and you're experimenting and mixing up some of those notes. Maybe you're trying vibrato out a little bit, and maybe you're just trying to make a beautiful sound that is expressing what you're feeling in that moment, whether it's melancholy or whether it's happiness, or whether it's, anger, whatever it is, right? You just want to be playing to play a lot of times when you're practicing. Don't play because you're working on something every time. Play because you want to play, right? Or play the sounds that you want to hear, right? Try to make a beautiful sound. And when you make a beautiful sound, I made a beautiful sound. That was my practice. I did it, right? That's very important because, once we start to view music and this whole thing as like a thing that we have to do because we have to get it done, because we have to go to the lesson, because we have to show these people that we're this person, that we're making progress and stuff like that, it becomes for them and not for you. So always make sure that you're practicing for yourself and not for somebody else. They're just helping you. Yeah, essentially they're just here to help you, right? Enjoy your instrument. And so, talk to your instructor about, how you can be enjoying the process of playing more if that is something that isn't working out for you and you're starting to get a little bit, overwhelmed or stressed by, having to have a certain thing done. It's all just for fun at the end of the day, All right, but let's talk about when to practice your instrument. I really suggest practicing your instrument before your day starts. And here's why. Okay, so imagine we have a fictional character. His name is Jehoshaphat. And Jehoshaphat works a job, great job, It's just kind of regular hours though, 9-ish to 5-ish. And he wakes up, an hour before, 2 hours, an hour and a half before he's got to go to work. And he gets ready, makes his coffee, has breakfast and everything like that. And he's out the door and wants to be there 10 minutes early because he's a star employee. Then he goes through his workday, he crushes it because he's a star employee, like I said. And then he gets back home, maybe he has a family or a partner or significant other. And he gets home, he's kind of tired from the workday and he just wants to hang out and spend time with his significant other and or his kids. And then by the time his kid's gone to bed and he's hung out with his significant other for a decent amount of time, he's already super tired and all of the energy in his tank is drained. So this is why you want to start practicing at the beginning of the day. Carve out 20 to 30 minutes before you, get going, where you can sit down and play. And here's another big reason why for that. When you play, you're waking up your brain. And, as you're playing, you're getting this little dopamine rush going and you're having like a nice moment for yourself that you've carved out before anything else even happens in your day. And so that will avoid you feeling tired at the end and not having time for it. Do it in the beginning of the day if you're finding difficult times to be practicing. That is what I would suggest for the majority of people over 40, but you might have another time that works better for you. But if not, beginning of the day. Let's talk about the structure and the content of your practice time though. The structure and the content, I like to suggest people to go about it like this. You can really do whatever you want. The first and foremost, most important thing is, I always tell all my students, even if you don't follow this, even if you don't do what we're working on, even if you just sit down and spend time with your instrument, that is great. You just mess around and kind of play around a little bit and nick around with it. That's better than you doing nothing at all, right? So, just at least do that, right? But the structure and the content, if you need that, to have that, it would be like, this is what I suggest for people. Do something that warms you up, an exercise, or like maybe a scale or something like that. A couple times or a couple minutes. Then move on to, chords or playing a song that you're kind of learning and do that song. And that can last, anywhere from, 10 to 15 minutes maybe. After that, your third phase will be kind of going through scales and really more serious exercises than the ones you used to warm up with. And these are really, really important. Don't skip this phase of your practice time because you can sit there trying to learn a song and, have a difficult time with it and eventually end up getting it just because of the sheer amount of time that you spent practicing that specific song. Or you can have time like this in your schedule where you practice these scales and scale patterns as well. Talk to your instructor about, using scale patterns with your scales. You can do this and essentially practice the substrata for every song, right? Because think about this. If you practice the scales, those are the notes in the song that you're going to be playing anyways, right? So you're practicing those notes. If you practice patterns, you're going to be practicing a lot of the patterns and the movements and stuff like this that are going to be within the song, right? So I can practice in thirds, practice in fifths, practice groupings of fours and fives and all this different things, right? That will help you to learn and get every new song that you have down quicker than you would have otherwise. So very important part of practice. Do not skip this. If you are going to follow a specific regimen and be, on a regimen, definitely an important part of the practice. But moving on to the last thing would be ending your practice session. Just play something that's fun for you. Jam, improvise, make something up, be creative, improvise over a backing track. Just do something fun for you. No expectations or anything like that. And do that. The scales, by the way, I forgot to mention, was about 10 to 15 minutes as well. But do this for as long as you want to after you're done with that. And when you leave that practice session, you're going to feel fulfilled and you're going to feel energized, because being creative and going through and, just exercising the skills that we have in order to make something, it's very energizing. And so when you leave the instrument, you're going to remember that's the last memory that you had from playing. And so you're going to be more likely to return if you have a good feeling when you last left, right? So if you're hanging your head as you leave the instrument, you're less likely to return sooner than you would otherwise. So that's the structure of the practice that I would do and that I recommend for people. It works pretty well. And the last thing that I'll talk about is the mindset going through your journey. You being an adult learner, this could potentially be a strong suit of yours that you're going to have. You have perspective, you know that everything that's worthwhile doing takes time to, be able to build those skills in order to do it, right? So I do want to just mention a couple quick things though that are, we know these things intellectually, but to really let them sink through is going to be super important for you. First thing you probably already know is that it's never too late to start. You can look through and go on the Googles and just look up a bunch of different examples of musicians who started later on in life and absolutely crushed it and even became pretty popular. So that's a very encouraging thing for us to hear, something you probably already know. So let's move on to the next point of the mindset. Point 2 of mindset would be keep it light. Do not make it super serious, at least in the beginning. If you get, pretty solid and you want to be, be getting more serious and stuff like that, great. But definitely in the beginning phases for like the first 6 months to maybe 2 years, just have fun with it. Really just make it a part of your everyday and just like enjoy the process of going through and playing these beautiful notes and making something and, maybe showing your kids or showing your significant other the things that you've achieved, and that will boost you. It'll give you a little boost. The third and most important thing that we've already touched on, I want to emphasize here. Do not quit on the dip. Do not quit on the dip. Right? Because everything that you're learning, right? You're learning all this stuff and you're getting pretty good at chords, you're doing little riffs and melodies here. And then all of a sudden, if you're playing guitar, you have to learn bar chords. And then all of a sudden, you have to abandon what you're good at to learn this new skill that you're not so good at. So you're giving a rest to all the things you're good at to get better at what you're not good at. And so it feels like we're moving down, but that's just before you make a spike upward. So do not quit on the plateau or the dip. It's very, very important for you to just keep going and go back and realize how far you've come since you first started and how that growth will continue if you just do not give up. I'm so excited to hear about your journeys. Drop them in the comments if you can come back and do that. I have a question for you though. Have you already decided what instrument you're going to play? If you have, I want to see it in the comments. Tell me what you're doing. If you haven't, if you got some idea, post that in the comments as well. And let's start a conversation down there about, what the different instruments are going to be like and what are your suggestions if you've got any. If you like this video, go ahead and press like. If you really want to help this small channel out, go ahead and press subscribe. Got more videos like this coming down the road that are going to be a little bit more geared to specific instruments rather than just a shotgun of all instruments. So stay tuned for that and press the notification. Let's be honest, no one presses the notification bell, do they? So don't worry about that, but I'll see you in the next one. Hope you're having a great day. See you soon. Take it easy. Bye.